to call upon Brother Andrew to introduce our guest speaker. Brother Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Carmen, Brother Chairman. Now, seeing as this seminar's focus has been on developing the order through the branches, specifically by seeking the needs of our parishes and their clergy, we are very privileged today to have someone here who, in a matter of months' time, will be undertaking that vocation, where he will be ordained as a priest for the Archdiocese of Melbourne. We've gotten to know him, Brother Carmen and myself, for the last few years through the work of the Priest Support and Education Fund through the Archbishop's Dinner. He is the son of our member at Dandenong North, Rawlins. We have a commonality, Deacon Nathan and I, in that we both lived in the same street and went to the same schools, but in different decades.
You wouldn't know looking at us.
Proud St. Elizabeth's Nazareth boys. Without much further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone, Deacon Nathan Rawlins.
Thank you very much. I've been warned that I have to keep it to 20 minutes. As my father will tell you, the trick is not getting me to talk, it's getting me to shut up. So I'm going to start that timer now, and let's hope I keep to it. So I'd like to thank Carmen and Andrew for extending this invitation for me to speak to you today. I should probably just introduce myself very quickly. My name is Nathan Rawlins. I'm a deacon, transitional deacon for the Archdiocese of Melbourne. I'm looking forward to, hopefully, God willing, Bishop willing, Rector willing, to being ordained a priest, hopefully in September, which will be a wonderful occasion for me. I've done plenty of university study. I don't know if it made me any smarter or any better, but it's there. I've given me a large fee helper and Hexted, so that's probably going to be good. Yep, I'm currently at Corpus Christi College. I entered Corpus Christi College in 2013, shortly after finishing my Bachelor of Teaching, Bachelor of Arts at ACU, and then went through the seminary program. My fourth year placement was actually here in Box Hill. So I have a long sort of connection. Every so often I've popped up on the Knight's radar, I think. I ended up here in Box Hill under Father Tony Kieran. The parish next door to mine is the Dandenong North branch. I then was very privileged to receive the Walter P. Martin Award for the seminarians to go across to the Holy Land, where I went in the end of my 5th year. And then now into my 6th year, I am placed at the Dandenong parish. Going through my 7th year this year, also preparing for ordination. A couple of things about me. I'm what you would probably call a caffeine addict. I drink probably far beyond the recommended dosage of coffee. So I have Pope Clement VIII to kindly thank for that. Here you can see up there. So, as I was a deacon, as I was preparing for ordination to the Diaconate, I had to go through this process of transitioning from being considered a layman to a cleric. And they really encourage you to reflect on that very heavily, on sort of that step that you are changing. And for me, I found myself going through that process, asking myself really 2 questions. Well, what is the role of the clergy? And that was pretty quickly and easily demarcated out for me. This is what a cleric does. Fantastic. But then it left an awkward question out. Was I a good layman? I couldn't answer that question very easily. Did I do the vocation of the laity well? So that got me thinking. What does it mean to be a Catholic layman? What does it mean to take up that role that Christ has given me in my baptism and strengthened me in my confirmation? Did I do it even? When I really seriously thought and considered about it, I realised that I didn't do a very good job of it. I actually kind of sucked at it, as we would say. So when Carmen and Andrew asked me to speak about what the Knights of the Southern Cross could do to help support the needs of the clergy, And when we're going into the parishes, the first thing I did was I spoke to the other seminarians. So I started with the seminarians in Australia and I spoke to them and I said, well, what can the Knights of the Southern Cross do to support us as we take that step into the parish? And we came up with a whole bunch of pragmatic ideas, but then we realised that a lot of those are reduced to locality, where those parishes are. Some parishes may need working bees or prayer groups, and some parishes might not. So what Archbishop Peter keeps speaking about as locality, each parish is just as unique as each person in that parish. It has its own history, its own culture. And so when I started speaking to them, we started refining it a bit more to realise that the answer to the question that had bothered me over the years was really what we needed. But then I spoke to seminarians in Ireland as well. There's a seminarian I'm in contact with named Killian there. And I asked him some of the questions that I asked the brothers. One, he said, you're very lucky to have a group of Catholic men who are willing to, be in every parish and establish these branches and stuff like that, because at the moment we don't really have that here. The ones that we had got decimated, really, after the sexual abuse crisis. And then, more and more, we thought, as the senior seminarians and deacons, we realised that what we needed before the Knights of the Southern Cross, before anything else, was we needed you to be models of the mission. The models of the mission of the church. To show the parish communities what the vocation of the laity is. It's only out of applying this to the localities of the parish that we can find out what the real things that we need to be done. So what is the disciple called to? Holiness. But holiness isn't perfection. God alone is perfect. Holiness is wholeness, a centeredness on God. That the different parts of our lives are focused in on God, and that's where we take our model from. That God calls each person to holiness and communion with himself in a very particular way. So that can be in the lay state, as those who are single, those who are married, those who are consecrated, but also in the clergy, those who have received holy orders. What is that vocation? There's one mission, but it's not your mission or my mission. It's neither of our missions, it's Christ's mission. The church has Christ's mission as its own. And this was a question that occupied the Second Vatican Council. What is the role of the laity? What is the vocation of the laity? So you see it written out there in Apostolicam Actuositate, which is very difficult. I had to practice for about 3 weeks how to say that rather fluently and not sort of stumble over it. But it's a worthwhile document to actually go and read. What does this mean? What does all of this mean? That the laity likewise share in the priestly, prophetic and royal office of Christ. That they exercise the apostolate in fact by their activity directed to the evangelization and sanctification of men, and the penetrating and perfecting of the temporal order through the spirit of the gospel. What does all of that really mean? Well, let's break it down. Christ has 3 offices, we traditionally say in the church, the trias munera. He's a priest, he's a prophet, and he's a king. And in baptism, when we're baptized, we're incorporated into the body of Christ. And those 3 offices are things that we now share in. We're entrusted with them. We are priests, we are prophets, and we are kings. Just as Christ is a priest, prophet, and king. As a priest, we are called to sanctify. As a prophet, we are called to evangelize. And as a king, we are called to order or restore the order of all things to Christ. To center things onto Christ. And how we do that depends on our religious vocation. Whether we're married, whether we're single, whether we're clergy or religious. The vocation of the laity I therefore sum up as the sanctification, evangelization, and restoration of all things to Christ. That's Christ's mission. That's the church's mission. That's our mission. Every Catholic, especially every lay Catholic, has an intrinsic right to that apostolate by virtue of their baptism and their confirmation. That's our mission, your mission and mine. Now often people will say, oh look, Deacon, I don't have a right to do that. That's the priest's job. That's the deacon's job. That's the church's job. I just sit, stand, kneel and say amen at certain points throughout the day. My job is to pray, pay and obey. Yeah, no. No, anyone who tells you we're about 60 or so years after the council, anyone who tells you that the job of the laity is to pray, pay and obey, to sit, stand, kneel and say amen, hopefully loud enough that the deacon on the altar can hear you, hasn't read the Vatican II documents. Do you have a right to this apostolate, to be a priest, prophet and king? Vatican II says yes. Because you derive that right from your union with Christ in your baptism. To put it in a pop culture reference, nobody puts baby in the corner. We are all part of that apostolate. The reason is we were assigned that apostolate by the Lord himself. When the priest baptizes us, it's Christ baptizing. It's Christ giving that mission to us. The church, we often forget, is laity and clergy. But the mission of the church cannot go on unless there are both working together. So the gospel cannot be deeply grounded in the abilities, life and work of any people without the presence of lay men. Even at the founding of a church, wherever in the world it is, we have to establish a mature Christian laity because they belong to the people of God and to civil society. Okay, that's great, Deacon, but how do we do that? Let's break them up into the three areas: the priest, the prophet, and the king. If we're priests, we're called to sanctify. These are really good areas, I think, to often sort of evangelize or consider how we're going about doing our mission. So the first one is priest. One who is called to sanctify, to offer sacrifice and prayer to God on behalf of people. So that can look like the divine office. What about the prayers that we offer for other people? What about the spiritual formation, retreats, meditations, Lectio Divina? What about the encouraging others and our own selves to celebrate Mass with full conscious and active participation? How do we model also that life of prayer and sacrifice to other men in the parish? What does it mean to model that? What is often missing in parishes is a men's spiritual ministry. I think of Robert Falzone, who does Men Alive. Some of you may have done that program or heard of it. He keeps talking about and asking the question, like most of us, where are all the men? How do we develop a masculine spirituality? We see it really strongly in the US. They've got that focus now on that. But then also as prophets, we're called to evangelize. How do we participate in the new evangelization? That thing that John Paul II and Benedict XVI and now Francis keep talking about. How do we witness to Christ? How do we spread the gospel? Now that means that we have to pay attention to how we can help others do that. How do we teach others to act and speak on matters of faith, on social justice, on the moral or the economic or the political, etc.? How do we work on our intellectual formation? How do we learn the faith? Do we run adult faith formation programs? Catechesis, where we learn the faith, and then apologetics. How do we communicate that to other people? For example, many people often tell me that, look, adult faith formation, all well and good, but that's like a pious hobby. I've got an MBA or a BA or a doctorate in law or a PhD. Why do I need faith formation? Well, we all need faith formation. Just because we've got a JD doesn't mean that we know the faith. But we have to continuously learn it over the course of our lives. Would you take your car, say you had a 2018 Toyota Yaris, would you take it to a mechanic who stopped learning how to fix cars back in 1976? No, you wouldn't. We have to update our knowledge. The truths of the faith are eternal, but we have to keep learning them and applying them. So many people say, oh, evangelization, they think you're standing on a soapbox and telling people that the end is coming. That's not my job, Deacon, that's your job. You have to evangelize. Yeah, and that's true, I do. But it's not just me. In fact, the laity, I argue, are the most adept for it. The best suited for it. Because I can't go everywhere you can. Think of the stains of clericalism, or the modern sexual abuse crisis, or the general area of religions and religious, well, I'm sorry, but you're not welcome here into this sector of our society. But there's also a presumption of condemnation. People see me and automatically presume that I'm a moralizing bigot. When they see the collar, for example, what do you think first comes to their mind? Religious nut? Bigot? Pedophile? It was one of my first experiences wearing the collar. I had to walk to CBC and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It's cutting into the skin a bit. And I remember seeing a lady, and we were crossing the road, and she had her little son in her hand. And as she saw me, you notice it now, you know how men look over women, like their eyes just go down and up? I had the exact same thing happen to me. That's the weirdest feeling I ever had. She sort of looked me over, grabbed her son and pulled him behind her, like that. I've heard from other priests that they don't wear the collar because it automatically has that presumption of condemnation. Press the buttons where I should be. The laity are not there to sit, stand, kneel and obey. That's not the job of the laity. The Second Vatican Council said that extremely clearly in the documents. So the one problem, no one reads the Vatican II documents because they're written in Vaticanese and they're written by theologians and philosophers. So unless you've got a theology degree, a philosophy degree and an Oxford dictionary at hand, you can't make hightail sense of it sometimes. I say that the laity need to go to the peripheries and gossip the gospel. That's something Pope Francis talked about. To spread the gospel by gossiping it, in a sense, speaking of it quietly, standing up and pointing out principles as we go along. We come to the last one, the king. A king's job in the Bible was to order everything towards God, to make sure that the civil state was directed towards God. King David did it, Solomon did it, the rest of the Israelite kings, and David and Solomon actually tried to do it and often weren't that very good at it. So we need to restore the gospel to the centre point of our society. So where is our social justice outreach in this regard? what motivates it. We see a problem, we apply the principles to it, and we try and work out a practical way to fix it. It's a very masculine way of doing things. Women generally don't like when I say that. But it means that we apply those gospel principles to our locality, to our parish. So we think of the 4 principles of Catholic social teaching. The dignity of the human person, because every person is created in the image and likeness of God. The common good. It's not just about what's good for me, it's what about good for everyone. Solidarity. We stand with our brothers and sisters, we're not on our own. And subsidiarity. The lowest levels, the grassroots levels, are often the best place for this work, for this change. So we have to ask ourselves, how can my local society be centered on the gospel? But is my own understanding of sort of worldly things, is it ordered rightly? There's one problem. Very often the laity feel that they can't do it. I haven't been taught how to do this. I don't know what this looks like. I argue that there's 2 problems there. First is what I call purple ecclesiology. There's this horrible image of the church, which is promoted often by the media, that when you speak about the church, it's men in black dresses with buttons down the front, with bald patches, and a passion for medieval haberdashery. It's priests, deacons, and bishops who are the church, and everyone else is just sort of on the side. They're members, sort of a club. They don't play on the field, but they sit in the stands and they can wave the banners. That's the best they can do. No. We say that the church is the entire people of God. But what we often see is that the laity need formation. They need models of what that vocation of a priest, prophet, and king in my situation looks like. I can stand up there and tell them, but they need an example. I can give the best example I can, but I can't model it in family life. I can't model it in my workplace, because my workplace is the parish. I need other models, other people to work with me. We need to establish a mature Christian laity. What they need, I argue, is models. They need people to model what it means to be a good Christian man. Because when they see an example, they can follow it. When we're kids, we model ourselves off our fathers. Our understanding of what it means to be a man often comes from our father. Which comes from his father, which comes from his father. Even as a priest, I'm realizing more and more as I get towards priesthood and I'm asked to reflect on these things, my understanding and modelling of ministry is from the priests who have gone before me. My parish priest, the priests that I studied with, the priests that I had to work under in parishes, the formators in the seminary. I model myself off them. I do as they do. How I think the Knights of the Southern Cross can help the laity is to model the lay vocation in all its wonder. But what about the clergy? What do we need? One seminarian I spoke to in the hallway said, if I can ask you something, could you just tell them one thing? The life of a priest is joyful, but it's not always happy. What I need most is fraternity and support. That's the same what I heard from Ireland. That's the same that I found when I went to visit the North American College in Rome. We can't do it on our own. We need the support of our laity. But we need that fraternal relationship as well. We need brothers. We have them in the seminary, and it's great. We have our brothers to tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, to support and to remind us that we're supposed to do a little bit better. But then you get out into the parish, and you're maybe one, or you might be on your own, there may be two. If you're lucky, maybe sometimes there's even 3 priests in the parish. But you still need that fraternal support. Otherwise you feel isolated. So I'd like to ask 2 questions. Can the Knights of the Southern Cross model for the parish and form the parish for the mission of the laity? Can the Knights of the Southern Cross show in their lives and invite others to participate in that extraordinary mission of the church that is specifically given to the laity in all its breadth, depth, and wonder? When I was at CGC, one of the lecturers used to say, the most important word you'll ever learn about spirituality comes from the first word of the rule of St. Benedict, obsculta. As Father Austin Cooper used to say this. It means listen. Not hear, to listen. Not just through your ears, but at the level of your heart. I don't think this has been heard or listened to. So I'll say it now in conclusion. Hear, O Christian knight. You are a priest, a prophet, and a king. Recognize your dignity, that the mission of Christ has been given to you by Christ himself. You are a priest, one who sanctifies and offers sacrifice. Sanctify the world with more models, because it needs it. It needs models of sanctification in all the corners of the world, just as Christ sanctified the world. You are a prophet. You are one who is an upholder of holiness in the world about you. Evangelize the world and take the gospel to the ends of the earth. For this is the mission of Christ gave you at your baptism. To make known to God's people their salvation through forgiveness of their sins. That loving kindness in the heart of our God, who has visited us like the dawn from on high. To give light to those in darkness and those who dwell in the shadow of death. And you are a king. You are one who rightly orders the temporal world, whatever that kingdom may be. Restore the world to Christ, so that God may be all in all, and to guide this land, Australia, into the way of true peace. Please, work with me. Work with us. That's the only way the mission of Christ can be worked. The only way it can be done. We can only do it together. Thank you.
While we've got Deacon Nathan here, questions from the floor. Don't be shy.
Yes.
I think I heard you say you have to wear the collar. You don't have to wear it.
No, you don't. You don't have to wear the collar, but I guess it's a choice that a lot of the younger ones coming through are making. It's sort of like a billboard. I become a walking billboard for Christ because we live in a society that's Christ haunted, as Bishop Barron likes to say. You know, that we've pushed Jesus to the side, but he's sort of still there in the background. We see it in our social, in our media, in our culture, especially in our art, in our movies. You see it sort of popping up everywhere. Christ is sort of there, So whenever people see me, the first thing they think of is church, Jesus, and then they add on all the other little bits afterwards. I don't have to wear it, but I choose to wear it, I guess.
Could I add a question?
Yeah.
In light of what you said,
Yep.
the Royal Commission on Child Sexual Abuse, which must be one of your biggest challenges,
Yep.
coming through the seminary, moving into priesthood. How do you deal with that?
How do I deal with that? Yeah. I guess I'm from a weird generation. I entered seminary in 2013, which means that when I was going through high school and going through uni, the Herald Sun often had, pedophile priest, blah, 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 on the front page almost every day. My classmates at my alma mater used to stick the vocations pamphlets in my locker in year 9 every day, and I used to open it up, and this was during the highest point of the sexual abuse crisis. And I'd open up my locker every morning and these pamphlets would fly out at me. And I'd collect them all up and put them back in the chapel. And the next day this would happen again and again. If there was an article, I was guaranteed to read it because it was rolled up and stuck in my article in my locker as well. So I dealt with a lot of that. You see yourself as part of the solution, not part of the problem. That's often what I've found. A lot of us sort of see ourselves, we're not here to be a part of the problem. We're not part of the problem. We're here to be part of the solution. And it's a long, hard road. It's uphill. We need all the support we can get. But you learn to sort of unite it with the sacrifices of Christ. People saw Christ and went, oh, well, he must be a nut and things like that. They thought he was all sorts of things. But it's not something that was new to the church as well. I think a good dose of church history, as sometimes boring as it can be, is often sometimes the best solution to that. This isn't the first time we've gone through this over our 2,000-year history. You sort of started with the Roman Empire persecuting us, then we went good. But then we became a bit worldly. So Anthony went out into the desert and started the Desert Fathers. And then people started leaving the big cities in Egypt and were going out into the desert to visit these crazy men living in caves who were praying all day. Because it was just so completely unknown. And then from that, the monasteries came about. Benedict established the monasteries in the West. But then the monasteries went bad, and then God called Francis along. And then the Franciscans started, and 1,000 people joined before Francis had even died in his first year or two, I think. He had about 1,000 people around Assisi running around in brown cloaks, preaching about God. And then the Mendicant orders, we saw the same thing with Dominic. And we saw the same thing during the Protestant Reformation. Everyone thought that was the end of the world. The church was completely shattered. Then the Jesuits came along, and they were good. Then we had the French Revolution, and we thought, oh, well, there's secularism's won. And then the Oblates came out of that. Society of the Holy Cross, I believe, as well. Nowadays, who? Out of the Spanish Civil War, you had Opus Dei. All of these different groups. Every so often, things get worse, and then God steps in and zaps, and it gets better. And then it teeters off, and then it gets better. This is the ebb and flow of the church. But today's problem is not going to be solved, I think, by a religious order. We'll do the best we can. It's part of it. I think a lot of the healing for the sexual abuse crisis is not going to come from statements or from a new religious order who's dedicated to whatever. I think it's going to come from the laity. I think it's going to come from the Knights of the Southern Cross. I think it'll come from you. You will show people what Christianity is. What it means to live the life of a Christian man. Because that inspires us as well. When we see the laity living the Christian life, that invigorates us. We go into parishes going, yes, we can do this. I can step into this parish, okay, it might be broke and there might be a history of sexual abuse and things like that, or it could be that there is no one cares. But when you meet a group of core people who want to live the Christian life in its full, that keeps you going. That keeps me going. Keeps many of us going. So you learn to ride, you keep that in mind, the history of the church as well. But from my time in the seminary, I see good days coming. People talk about clericalism. I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I don't think many of my brothers who fully grasp the layout of the church today, after the sexual abuse crisis and clericalism and things like that, can truly hold on to this idea that I'm a priest, therefore I must be better than everyone else. I don't really think they can. I think a lot of them are like, no, I want to work with the people. Because we can't do it on our own. Well, you think of what, there's 1 billion Catholics. A lot of this work, you can think, oh yeah, no, Father, that's your job. There's 1 billion Catholics, isn't there, in the world, or something like that? Do you know how many of those are priests, bishops and deacons? Something like that. It's about 400,000 all over the world. I'm outnumbered substantially.
This is why he needs our help.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yeah.
Just want to ask on the, as part of our formation, was to recruit more youngsters in the Northern Southern Cross. And I mean, everybody agrees with me, there is more need of priests as well.
Yes.
Big need of priests.
Yes.
So, what do you think? What is the issue here? Is it the calling? There is no like lot of callings, or is it the answer that you answer selflessly or generously? Is it your how you answer that calling, which?
Yeah.
I think it. I mean, my opinion is the answer.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of factors that can encourage or inhibit someone from responding to what God calls them to do. I don't think that there's a. I don't think our problem is a lack of number of clergy, though. What do we say? You know, there's the seminary has 50 seminarians in it for the province of Victoria and Tasmania and Adelaide as well. Now we take the Adelaide province and the Victoria province, so we're close to being a national seminary at this rate. But how many Catholics practice? Lay Catholics practice? 11%. In some areas of the world, it's 7%. We think in Australia, we actually have the highest record, I think. I think ours is close to 7 or 6% of Catholics, total Catholics, practice the faith. That means going to Mass once a month. Not every week, once a month. That's what they narrowed it down to. What we need are models in sort of the laity. But as we live the life of laity, then we can discern our vocation. Unless you're a really strong layman, if you're a really strong layman, if you live the Christian faith fully as a layman, when you step into clerical life, or married life, or religious life, that's when you flourish as well. Because you've got that solid foundation. So many people don't have that at all. God can call them to be a priest, but they need that foundation of support as well.
One last question. Brother Jerry?
I was just going to, you mentioned catechesis. I was wondering if there's an expanded sort of role you could
Sure.
elaborate on that.
That's the dangerous question. My biggest area that I like to focus on is adult faith formation. Those of you who remember when I was here in Box Hill, I created and ran a faith formation program. and I did my master's capstone on the need for adult faith formation. It's something that I harp on quite a lot about. One thing where the Council Fathers did notice, and that John Paul II did notice later, was that we had many of the laity didn't actually know the faith. They couldn't define the measures of the faith, the articles of the faith. They didn't know what the church taught on certain matters. If you asked a Catholic, you know, how many gods do the Catholics worship? They would say 3. No. One God, 3 persons. And then if you ask them questions about the moral life, and they say, well, basically, if it has to do with sex, the church is against it, and the church, and then other things that come through sort of media influences and things like that. These false ideas of what the church teaches on certain areas just comes through. If we want to know Christ, we have to get to know Him. Sounds simple enough. That means we have to get to know Him in the Gospels. St. Jerome said, ignorance of the Gospels is ignorance of Christ. But ignorance of sort of the church's teachings is ignorance of the church as well. What does it mean to live my life? So the way I sort of explain it is that Jesus says, yeah, there's 2 commandments. What's the first commandment? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. With all my heart, sure, I'm good with that. With all my soul, yes, sir. With all my strength, you call a working bee, I'll be there. My mind, no, that's only for priests and deacons. Now, like, you only really study Catholicism if you really want to be like one of the, you know, priests and the deacons and one of those nuts. You know, everyone else just does everything else, and that's where that purple ecclesiology problem comes in. Everyone thinks, oh, well, that's not my responsibility. If evangelization is the responsibility of everyone, as has been hammered to us almost every 10 years since the council, that means we have to actually know the faith before we can talk to other people about it. So there's plenty of resources out there. The main impetus for the catechism was so that the Catholics could actually know the faith. And that they realised that that was too long and wordy, so they tried to shorten it, so they made the compendium of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And now we have all these programs. We have Word on Fire, we have Symbolon, we have the Augustine Institute. There are so much resources coming through both digitally and in print. But we're hesitant to pick them up because we go, well, no, that's not for me. That's for deacons and priests, etc. Yeah. I can go on and on and on about it, but I won't. Because, you know, we don't want to do that.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
Nathan, it's really good to see you in a clerical culture. I believe, you know, we recognise firemen, we recognise policemen, we recognise ambulance people, all sorts of people, and yet so many priests refuse to wear the clerical collar. I believe it's beautiful that you do, and that many priests do that. And it's recognized. So wonderful.
Yeah, it's a bit like uniform. It's not all bad though, I must admit. I have gone into when I had to go and organise something for a seminary convivium. It's basically a party, and I went into BWS, which is, I forgot about whole priests being, you know, having problems with alcoholism, so that image wasn't very good. Because that's not my generation. We don't have alcoholism. Not yet. Oh, God willing, hopefully not. But I walked in there, and this young man behind the counter was just sort of like weirdly looking to me, and he goes, "Can you guys drink?" And I went, "Yes, I'm Catholic." The pint, the pot, and the catechism all work together, mate. Don't worry. He then went on to tell me that, oh well, the singles and Duffy's on special down the back, and I kept a few bottles aside, but don't worry, Father, I'll pull one out for you. It was like, oh,
I've been very fortunate to have Deacon Nathan at St. Mary's, and they can talk, so there's no problems about that.
like I said, get me to shut up.
But thank you very much. I just want to call Brother Andrew just to pass on thank you on behalf of the Knights of Southern Cross. But I truly appreciate you coming today. I will apologise now. We've got a little gift which I'm going to drop into you, and I'll drop into you
Oh,
next
thank you
time.
very much. Thank you very much, brothers.
As Brother comes in again, I would like to thank Deacon Nathan for giving him his time to come here and to address us. When we were thinking about who we could get to address this seminar, I thought about what the topic of the seminar would be, about the future role of the Knights, and it occurred to me to go to someone who's not already a priest but about to become a priest, to see what their needs could be going forward, what they themselves going in would be. So we thank Deacon Nathan for coming today, for giving him his time, for coming up with that great, wonderful presentation, and for giving us such a great